Hi, welcome to the Sales Strategies for Christian Coaches podcast. I'm Justin Janowski, your host, and I started my Christian coaching business in December of 2018, just hoping I could make it. I felt nervous. I had a lot of self-doubt. I wasn't sure whether or not this is what I was supposed to be doing, but I felt like God was calling me to it. And so even though part of me wanted to turn back, I kept going forward, and God provided beyond what I could have imagined. I collected over $250,000 my first year in business, and I've been helping other Christian coaches ever since build their dream businesses, primarily through helping them with their business models, their offers, their pricing, and their sales strategies. I believe sales can be high integrity, loving, and good when it's done the right way. And so that's what this podcast is about. It's about helping you figure out what you need to have success in your coaching business. Today, I have a special guest and a friend, Steve Thompson. Steve is an amazing person. He's been a client at Faith to Influence for multiple years now. He's been through our sales school. He's in our Christian Coaches Academy community. He's done private coaching and spent a day with my family here in Milwaukee, and we loved having him. He's just an amazing, amazing person. Steve has been married for 31 years. He's got 4 kids. He's got 5 grandchildren. He has coached sports for all ages for 15 years, and he's been a high school athletic director for 19 years. He founded his business and mission, Lighthouse Legacies, in 2021. Steve has done some really cool things with that, including like a blog and newsletter that he sends out every single week, a podcast that he launched last year. And his focus, his mission, is to help people leave a legacy. And I think this is a really important topic that probably doesn't get brought up enough. And I certainly don't think about or talk about it enough. And so I'm always grateful to have the time with Steve to talk more about legacy and what it is and why it matters. Steve is going to be sponsoring and speaking at our summer conference. He spoke last year. People were crying. People were thanking him. He underestimates maybe sometimes how valuable what he has to share is because it's so meaningful to people. And he's going to be speaking again at our conference this summer, and I'm so excited for him to be back on the stage. Steve, thanks for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Justin. I can't tell you what an honor it is for me to join you, but also just to partner with you in life. I remember our very first phone call where I stood on my back patio, and I remember my very first words saying, I'm going to be connected with this man probably for the rest of my life. So I am glad we've been able to stay connected for these years, and I look forward to this podcast. But I will say I really look forward to CCA Live 25. What an experience, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but that is an amazing experience. And if you're listening to this, I would say click on the link and sign up for that. It will be worth your time. Even if you had to pay like triple what they're offering, you would think you'd want to pay more because it's that good of experience.
That's kind.
So thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Thanks for being on. So, Steve, you've got an incredible story, and it kind of leads into why legacy is important to you. And so I'd love for you to share whatever you're willing, some of your story. I know you're going to share more at the conference as well, but tell us your story and how you came about in your passion for legacy.
Well, I could go back, for people to, and you can learn more at the conferences I'll share, just like you said. I could go back and tell you about my childhood that maybe wasn't the best. And I remember being 7 years old and making a decision that probably affected my legacy. And then to be married to one wife, to never raise my voice, to actually never hit my wife. You wouldn't think a 7-year-old would be having those kind of decisions on the stairway of their house. But after what I was watching, I made that decision. Plus, after what I went through. So that was a pivotal moment. Fast forward many, many years, actually over 10 years ago now, in 2014, I was struck by a car walking, multiple fractures, severed my main brain vein, spent 3 weeks in a coma. Best case scenario, vegetable if I lived. And by God's healing powers, by his grace, he's given me a second chance. And that's what I hope to share to people that every day God gives us a second chance. Again, you can learn more about that at CCA Live.
Well, 7 years old, you had this really kind of pivotal experience. Thank you for being willing to share that and be vulnerable about that. I know a lot of people have experienced trauma and pain, and a lot of people had neglectful parents, a lot of people had absent parents, a lot of people had abusive parents, or they know people who've had it. And so many people listening to this podcast have dealt with traumas that we don't even know. But for you at 7 years old, you saw things happening in your house that we wish nobody would see. But you made a decision that you were going to leave a different legacy, that you were going to be different, that your
Right.
home was going to be different, that your marriage was going to be different, that you'd create safety rather than abuse, that you'd create love rather than pain. And like, you've lived that. And I know what kind of husband and father you are and grandfather you are, and like what a blessing you've been for somebody who's been through pain and trauma when they were little. If somebody's listening to this and we don't know what they've been through, but if they're like, wow, like I went through something really hard, how can we take some pain that we've been through and make a decision to be different? How can we break that chain that people have experienced in the way that we live our life?
That's a good, Justin. That's a good question. That varies for different people, and I don't mean to speak, but I do think the dad wound is real. Um, I have a chance to leave a different Thompson legacy than what was shown to me. My wife, she wants to maybe rehash some things in my childhood. Just 2 weeks ago, we talked about a different type of abuse, and that one of her friends is a counselor for kids that have to do this. And I said, yeah, that happened to me.
Mm.
And she immediately started crying. Why didn't you tell me? And I said, I just don't carry it. And that's not a coping, but actually I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful for the hardships. I'm thankful for not telling my first grade teacher why my ribs hurt. I'm thankful for wearing long sleeves in May to hide bruises. I'm thankful that God, even though I did not know him, he knew me.
Mm.
And all through this trajectory of life, he's guided me to be thankful. And honestly, I don't judge that man because I forgive him. I've been forgiven. So my strategy for other people that's went through very similar traumas, very strong hardships, is just I don't live there. I could, for years I carried around anger. For years I carried around hate. For years I carried around a burden, and it just doesn't it doesn't suit me.
Yeah.
And so if a person is still going through that, maybe 10 years ago, maybe currently, maybe they're in a relationship um, that's not in a good situation, then seek help. Seek
Yes.
help. There's loving professionals that are willing to at least let you have a voice.
Yes. Okay, cool. I'm hearing a few things that I think are really important. Thank you for sharing this and sharing your story and all of this. But I'm hearing forgiveness, and that can be one of the hardest things for people to forgive others, for people to forgive themselves. But there's great healing in that, and like
Yep.
seeking out the help that we need, the professional help that we need, if we know that we're still really struggling with something.
Right.
And the other thing you said that I just want to draw attention to is when you were little and you were going through this really hard time, this painful situation. I can't even imagine. I'm so sorry that you went through. But you've got this perspective now that even though you didn't know God, he knew you,
He knew me.
and you
Yep.
recognize how he was with you and all of that, which is just amazing. I, man, I feel like I could ask you 100 questions and I could have a 3-hour podcast with you on this. I want to
Long
transition.
form. Long form.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
long form marketing content. I, in the time that we have today, I want to fast forward to that time 10 years ago. You,
Hmm.
you were struck by a car. You nearly died. You were in coma for 3 weeks.
Yep.
What's your experience coming out of that coma?
Uh, Coming out of that coma, I didn't realize that half my skull had been removed to alleviate pressure. So I just knew that my head, the bandage was extremely tight.
Hmm.
So I didn't know. I also didn't know that there was 4 clocks on the wall. As I had, and through that recovery process, that rehab, I had to learn to walk, I had to learn to talk, I had to learn to fold towels, everything you can imagine. I had to relearn. I had to learn to read. Now, some things picked up pretty quick, so not not minimizing that. But I remember after I got home, when I nope, I was in the hospital. Excuse me, and I thought to myself, all alone, I thought, what would my kids have thought if I would have died?
Hmm.
And that's a hard question. That's a hard question because I mean, I was hooked. I didn't recognize myself. I saw a picture because of my bruising. I looked like a raccoon's been hit in the face with a baseball bat. That's how bad the brain bruising was on my skull. Um, what would my kids think about if their dad had died? What did I leave them with? And almost more importantly, what would my wife remember about her husband?
Hmm.
And I was in the rehab hospital. I can still remember that almost pain, I should say, how that made me feel. And I knew right then I wanted to change.
Right.
Because
Wow.
before that accident, I had completely walked away from God. I was on a downhill slide. Um, our marriage was in trouble. Everything that could go wrong, as far as not, I wasn't physical. I just wasn't paying attention to what was
Hmm.
going on, and we weren't in a good spot, my wife
Yeah.
and I.
That's such a valuable piece of insight and a great awareness. I wasn't paying attention. And that's like, it's so easy, right? Like we get so
Right.
busy. Life is busy, careers are busy, there's challenges, there's financial difficulties, there's so many things going on at once. Like sometimes I joke, how can somebody be a great husband or a great wife? Like how can somebody be a great spouse, be a great parent, run a business and mow their lawn? Like I'm like, how can I possibly mow my lawn when I'm doing these other things, right? It feels like some of the balls have to drop. There's so many things to be doing, and so it's easy to not pay enough attention to what's most important: our relationship with God, our relationship with our spouse, our relationship with our kids, and that recognition. And this, it's this topic can be hard. Some people listening to
Hmm.
this episode are going to be like, "Man, this is heavy stuff." And
Right.
I think it's really important for us to spend a certain percentage of our time
Right.
thinking about and processing these kinds of difficult questions, and recognizing like this can be a wake up call. If somebody's listening, they're like, "Man, I'm not paying enough attention to my spouse. I'm not paying enough attention to my relationship with God. I'm not paying enough attention with my kids. I'm too focused on work, or I'm too focused on my social life, or I'm too focused on social media or scrolling my phone or whatever it is, right? We all have our different vices. This can be that wake up call to say, wow, I need to pay attention and lean into what really matters. And
Right.
so I know that this was kind of an impetus for you to start saying, okay, my legacy matters. And you kind of define legacy a little bit there as, what are my kids going to remember about me? What is my wife going to remember about me? And so can you open that door a little bit further and share more about like what legacy means to you and how we can process that for ourselves and be more intentional about the legacy we want to live?
Yes. I I can, and it started. The idea of legacy at that time in the hospital, I wasn't really thinking about remembering or memories as legacy. I wasn't connecting those two dots. However, I don't know. Years later, I went to a financial advisor, and I that was starting to stir in me something about it. That was probably 2020, summer of 2020, maybe. And I remember, no, because that was the COVID year, so it was before that. But I remember him saying, your legacy was determined by the size of your life insurance. And I had walked away from that idea of legacy. And in that parking lot, it was like a July day. It was like 98 degrees out. And I sat in my car, truck, and windows rolled up, and just cried my head on the wheel. I'm like, there's more to my life than my life insurance. I need to start living a legacy. Because that would have been about the third gentleman who told me about leaving a legacy. And something happened that day that changed it from leaving one day to living my legacy today. So the whole premise of my LLC is live your legacy. So that's kind of the moment of that. And then a year later, 8 months later, started Lighthouse Legacies.
Yeah. So that's not to say that like leaving a
No,
legacy when you pass
no,
away is a bad thing. Great,
no,
wonderful. Life insurance can be great, and it's a wonderful way to protect our
right,
family. And sure, there's something about leaving a legacy
right.
that's
I
interesting.
agree.
But what you're sharing here, Steve, I think is so powerful, which is like not waiting until we die for something to be left behind, but living a legacy that impacts the people we love now. Can you speak to that a little bit and maybe share like 1 to 3 actionable things? What can somebody who's like, okay, you've got me. I'm at the edge of my seat. I'm recognizing I want to live a legacy now. What are 1 to 3 things that somebody could do to begin living a legacy today?
That's a good question, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity, and thank you for kind of putting me on the spot, causing me to answer it. But one of the things that the leaving a legacy, just like you said, I still have life insurance. I still have things. I want my wife to be cared for when I'm no longer here. But I keep saying, however, I don't want to be in regret when I'm on my last breaths. I don't want to look into my adult son or my adult daughter and say, I wish I could have done more. So that's the transition from leaving to transferring values, transferring lessons, transferring what I stand for to my children
Yeah.
so that their memory is stronger than their check.
Mm.
Um, so, a couple things that I kind of swear by that I talk about to groups is first of all, try and just, and it's very simple, Justin. I'm a simple guy to try and avoid regrets. Um, is try and find out your why. Try and find out your why. Why? And once you do that, to help you with that, I like to lead people through a core values exercise. What are the pillars of your life? What are the foundations of their core values? For me, faith, family, and fruit. Obviously everything result. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. I'm one of his followers. My family, and then what is the fruit? What am I giving? How am I serving others? And another tool that I like to lead people through is I'm 54 years old. I've learned lessons along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could give my kids, here's my life lessons. It doesn't have to be wordy. It doesn't have to be 300 pages, maybe one sheet that they know this is how, these are some things I learned that could help you. And then try and be known for one thing. You
Yeah.
know, for me, in my current job, I like to write thank you notes. I like to write congratulations cards.
Mm.
So I just wrote 115, and the feedback I got, no one's ever told me that. Thank
Mm.
you for appreciating me and things like that. So remember your why, get to your why, find your core values, who you are, what you stand for, what are unshakable things in your life, some lessons you've learned along the way that you'd like to transfer on, and then be memorable for one thing.
Mm. I love that. I love that. And like the one thing speaks a little bit to like, okay, so I want to relate some of this to like the entrepreneurial kind of coaching world a little bit. And when I think about like we need to leave a legacy or live a legacy in our life, right? So leaving a legacy, there's some things that maybe we leave behind, and there's financial, and among other things. Then there's living your legacy in your life with your relationships and with your family and all these things. What Steve shared is the why, like knowing your why is so important in legacy, leaving and living with specific lessons for the people that you love and care about, and being known for one thing that's so memorable. And I love that. I oftentimes think about when people say, oh, my dad always used to say this.
Mm-hmm.
my grandma used to tell us this, and they seem to have that thing, right, that we oftentimes are remembered for, and that kind of passes on. And so I love that, and I know you're talking about like living this now and the value of that. When I think about like a coaching business, or I think about an entrepreneur,
Right.
these same things are true. Like there are some things that we can leave behind. Like if we build our business a certain way, it could be passed on. It could outlive us. I'd love for faith to influence to exist far longer than I do, and it's going to be a
Right.
process in building and preparing it for that. Is a way of leaving a legacy, or maybe there's a book that I wrote, or my podcast lives on, right? But then even now, how can I live a legacy through my business? And it's like the relationships you build, the way you show up, your character, right? Is there a clear why behind my business? And can that be expressed in the way I'm showing up and felt in the way that I'm showing up? Are there key lessons that I'm sharing? You and I talked before we clicked play today about how great coaches, great leaders, they play the hits, right? They share the same concepts again and again. Those become the lessons. And then is there a one thing that we want to be known for? And we talk about that in terms of coaching as like your mission statement. Like, can what you do be so clear and memorable that there's one thing people remember you for, and they can refer business to you, that they come to you for that, you become known for that. And so like all of these same things, like there can be a legacy for ourselves that we're living, and a legacy for our business that we're living, and to spend time thinking about those things is so valuable. Like I said before, I feel like we could go further and further and deeper on
Right.
this. We're going to have time at the conference to do so. I want to say this: if people want more support from you on living a legacy now, I want to just direct them to lighthouselegacies.com. Lighthouse, just like you'd expect it to be spelled, legacies, just like you'd expect it to be spelled, lighthouselegacies.com. And you can get on Steve's mailing list. He sends out a Friday focus. You've done how many in a row?
I think I did over 6 years, 323
323
every Friday.
weekly newsletters, Friday focuses from Steve
Hmm.
Thompson. They are engaging, they're scripturally based, they're beautiful. Go to lighthouselegacies.com to get on his email list for that. You will be happy that you did. And then we had a cool story. I want to kind of end on this, a cool story of last year's conference. Steve came to last year's conference. I'll tell part of the story. I want you to tell the rest of it. Is that all right?
Yep. Yep.
Steve came to last year's conference. He spoke, he delivered, he served, he was awesome. And one of the things that we did was we helped people set goals. And this is a cool kind of experience that we have at our conference. We'll do it again this year. And we started asking the question, by when? By when will we accomplish this goal? And you were willing to be vulnerable and honest and share. There was a time that you told me you wanted to run a podcast of your own.
Right.
You wanted to start speaking some of these Lighthouse Legacy written ideas.
Right.
And when you told me that, you reminded me of this. And I've got a funny memory. I sometimes let certain things go. But there was a moment when we first met that you told me about that, and I sent you a microphone for you to
Right.
run your podcast with,
Right.
to support your audio. And you told me at the conference last summer that that microphone had been sitting on a shelf collecting dust and it hadn't been used. And you still wanted to start this podcast, but it had been a long time that you'd wanted to and you hadn't done it yet. And I asked you at the conference in front of everybody, by when will you start running your podcast? And you were bold and brave enough to choose a date on the calendar. And you chose that date, and the conference ended. And what happened next?
The conference ended, and so my date was July 12th. And I remember I thought I was on the spot speaking with people that I already come to love and have such an amazing experience at the conference. I was nervous. I was right behind like a multi-successful guy. And then you come up and thank me or what have you. And hey, about that podcast. And by when? And I'm like, I don't know, sometime before school. And then you just, in your way, you said, no, by when? And I said, I don't know, Justin. You know, kind of like in my head, I was going, whatever, please get me off in front of these people, and let me go sit down, finish my lunch. But I said July 12th.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got home at the end of June, started crafting it. You and I spoke on the phone on the how-tos, and by July 12th, I launched 6 episodes pre-recorded, and now I've just released my 42nd one.
Yes. 42 episodes of the podcast. How long did you want to run a podcast before you recorded that first episode, do you think?
At that time, I've been doing 5 years of Freddie Focus, so probably 3 years.
Yeah. 3 years of wanting to launch that podcast, having this entrepreneurial dream, and it just kind of sitting on the shelf, which is how it happens for almost all of us, right? I know a lot of our listeners are like that. There's something that they want to accomplish as an entrepreneur, as a coach, as a leader that they've been dreaming about, but it's been sitting on the shelf for years, just like you. And then we come to this event, and like this has been my experience too, by the way. I've had so many things that sat on the shelf, sat on the shelf, sat on the shelf, but there's something about the live event experience and being together where
Right.
our dreams become clearer and we have the opportunity to express them and share them with people, and we can make big commitments and share big goals, and then there's the action and accountability after that. And now here you are, 43 episodes into your podcast and doing it every single week and consistent and living out this dream and serving more people. And you know what it is? It's living in your legacy.
Right.
It's sharing your lessons. It's sharing your why. It's becoming known for the one thing, which for you is legacy. And I love that story. And I love how you rose to the occasion and took on the challenge. And so I want to invite people, come to our conference, come to CCA Live 2025, meet Steve Thompson. Wait till you hear the full details of his story. He's just one of the most amazing men. And he doesn't understand how great he is at times. And we've talked about that before. But when you really get to know Steve, he is one of the most loving, wisdom-filled, amazing people. He's got a big heart for service. He's got great character. He's a great husband, dad, grandfather, the kind of person you want to know, the kind of person you want to be like. And he's got such a gift. And so he'll be a great person for you to meet at the conference. He's going to speak. You're going to hear more of his story, more about legacy. I know you'll be inspired by it. And you get to be part of that experience where we set goals together and we decide by when, and we make commitments and we take action so that we can accomplish our entrepreneurial dreams. And the ripple of impact and the legacy of living what God has called us to is so meaningful. And that's really what this conference is all about. We're going to help you with sales. We're going to help you with marketing. We're going to connect you with Christian coaches and leaders. We're going to have 100 Christian coaches and leaders there. That's what we're really working for right now. And it's going to be an opportunity to pray together and dream together, and then to take action from there in implementation. So you can join us at the conference and sign up now at www.f2itribe.com/CCA Live. F2I Tribe is F, the letter, the number 2, the letter I, f2itribe.com/CCA Live. Come and join us. Steve, thank you so much for spending
Thank you
time
for
with
having
me
me.
today. I love you,
Thank you
brother.
for having. I love you too. I
Excited to
appreciate
be with
it.
you in person.
Yep. I
Here in
can't
June.
wait. I
All
can't
right.
wait.
Talk to y'all soon. God bless you.
Yeah. Bye.